February 19th, 1942. Dawn breaks across the Coral Sea, painting the Pacific waters in shades of amber and steel. Beneath the surface, at a depth of 60 feet, the USS Wahoo glides through the darkness like a predator born from American ingenuity. Her diesel engines silent, her electric motors humming with lethal precision. Commander Dudley Morton peers through the periscope, watching a Japanese convoy of 7 vessels cutting through waters they believed were theirs by divine right. The morning air above carries the salt tang of destiny, while below, 24 American torpedoes wait in their tubes like sleeping dragons. The submarine war in the Pacific began not with the grand gestures of carrier battles or the thunder of battleship guns, but in the silent depths where steel sharks prowled the ocean highways of empire. By early 1942, the Imperial Japanese Navy had swept across the Pacific with a confidence bordering on arrogance. Their admirals spoke of the Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere as if it were destiny written in the stars. They had crushed Pearl Harbor, devoured the Philippines, and sent the Royal Navy fleeing from Singapore. The Pacific, they believed, had become a Japanese lake. But beneath these conquered waters, a new breed of American warship was awakening. The Gato-Class Submarine represented more than naval architecture. It embodied the industrial might and technological sophistication that Japan's planners had catastrophically underestimated. Where Japanese submarines were designed primarily for fleet actions and honorable surface combat, these American boats were built for one purpose: to strangle the enemy's supply lines with methodical, relentless efficiency. The Gato-class boats stretched 311 feet from bow to stern, displacing 1,825 tons when submerged. Their 10 torpedo tubes could unleash destruction at ranges the Japanese had never imagined possible. But it was not merely their specifications that made them formidable. It was what they represented. Each submarine carried within its steel hull the accumulated wisdom of American industrial democracy, precision manufacturing, innovative engineering, and the peculiar American genius for mass production without sacrificing quality. Japanese naval doctrine had prepared for a different kind of war. Their submarines, magnificent in their own right, were conceived as extensions of the samurai spirit, instruments of decisive battle, tools for supporting fleet operations, weapons of honor. The I-class boats were larger, more heavily armed on the surface, designed to fight like surface raiders or to support major fleet engagements. They carried seaplanes, massive guns, and the expectation that submarine warfare would follow the traditions of naval combat dating back to Trafalgar. The first shock came not as thunder, but as absence. Japanese merchant captains began reporting ships that simply vanished. The freighter Tokushima Maru, carrying rice and ammunition to Rabaul, sent its final radio transmission at 0347 hours on March 15, 1942. The message was routine: position, weather, estimated arrival. Then silence. No distress call, no explosion witnessed by other vessels, no debris field discovered by search aircraft. The ship had simply ceased to exist, as if the ocean had opened its mouth and swallowed it whole. This was the signature of the Gato-class submarines. Death delivered without warning, without ceremony, without the elaborate martial rituals that Japanese naval tradition expected. American submarine commanders had been trained in a different school of warfare, one that prioritized results over honor, efficiency over glory. They struck from ambush, disappeared into the depths, and left only empty water where enemy ships had sailed moments before. The psychological impact on Japanese merchant marine crews was immediate and profound. These were men who had sailed the Pacific for decades, who knew every current and weather pattern from Tokyo to Palau. They had expected to face American destroyers and cruisers in honest combat, perhaps even American submarines fighting with the conventional tactics they understood. Instead, they found themselves hunted by invisible phantoms that attacked without warning and vanished without trace. Captain Tamaichi Hara, commanding the destroyer Shigure, would later write in his memoirs, "We had prepared to fight American submarines as we would fight our own, with courage, honor, and tactical skill." But these American boats fought like no submarines we had ever encountered. They were not weapons of war in the traditional sense. They were instruments of industrial assassination. The USS Drum, under Lieutenant Commander Robert Rice, demonstrated this new reality with surgical precision on April 3, 1942. Patrolling the shipping lanes between Truk and Rabaul, she detected a convoy of 4 Japanese transports escorted by 2 destroyers. The Japanese formation moved with the confidence of ships sailing in home waters, their escorts maintaining loose formation, their transports running with lights showing. They had no concept that American submarines might be operating in these supposedly secure areas. Rice maneuvered his boat with the patience of a hunter and the precision of a surgeon. For 6 hours, the Drum shadowed the convoy, calculating angles, measuring distances, waiting for the perfect geometric alignment that would allow maximum destruction with minimum risk. This was submarine warfare as American industrial philosophy. Methodical, calculated, utterly without sentimentality. At 18:23 hours, the Drum fired a spread of 6 torpedoes from her forward tubes. The Mark XIV Thor torpedoes, despite their early war problems, ran true and hot. The first transport, the Mizuho Maru, carrying 2,400 tons of aviation fuel, erupted in a fireball visible from 20 miles away. The second torpedo struck the troop transport Akagi Maru amidships, sending 800 Japanese soldiers into waters that would become their grave. The third torpedo found the ammunition ship Yamashina Maru, which disappeared in an explosion so violent it was recorded by seismic stations in Australia. In less than 4 minutes, the Drum had destroyed 3 ships totaling 18,000 tons of shipping and eliminated nearly 1,200 Japanese personnel. The surviving destroyer, damaged by debris and burning fuel, could only radio a confused and terrified report. Attacked by unknown submarine. Multiple ships lost. Enemy position unknown. Request immediate assistance. But assistance would not come, for the Drum had already vanished into the vast Pacific depths, her crew already calculating their next attack position. This was the new reality of submarine warfare. Not single dramatic actions, but sustained campaigns of economic strangulation. The bread. It became the symbol that haunted Japanese naval officers more than any strategic analysis or intelligence report. American submarine crews, captured during the rare occasions when a boat was lost, carried with them white bread that remained fresh for weeks. Bread baked with an abundance of wheat flour, enriched with vitamins, wrapped in waxed paper that spoke of industrial sophistication beyond Japanese comprehension. Japanese submariners survived on rice balls and dried fish, rations calculated to provide minimal nutrition for minimal cost. Their American counterparts dined on fresh bread, canned meat, real coffee, and ice cream makers that worked even in tropical waters. This was not mere luxury. It was a demonstration of industrial capacity that struck at the heart of Japanese strategic assumptions. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto had warned his government that America was a nation capable of building automobiles like other countries built bicycles. The bread proved his point in ways more devastating than battleship production statistics. A nation that could afford to send fresh bread into submarine warfare was a nation whose industrial capacity had been fundamentally miscalculated. The psychological warfare embedded in that bread was devastating. Japanese prisoners, interrogated aboard American submarines, found themselves facing not the lean, desperate warriors they expected, but well-fed sailors who spoke casually of homes filled with electric appliances, automobiles in every driveway, and abundance that seemed inexhaustible. The bread became a tangible symbol of the vast material disparity between the two nations, a disparity that no amount of courage or tactical skill could overcome. By June 1942, the strangulation had begun in earnest. The Gato-Class Submarines USS Silversides, Trigger, Wahoo, and Drum were operating in coordinated wolf packs, though American doctrine called them coordinated attack groups. The terminology mattered less than the results. Japanese shipping losses climbed from 18,000 tons per month in January 1942 to 87,000 tons per month by June. The Japanese Navy's response revealed the depth of their strategic misunderstanding. They assigned destroyer escorts to merchant convoys, but these escorts were trained for surface combat against enemy cruisers and destroyers. They had no experience with the patient, methodical stalking that characterized American submarine operations. Japanese destroyers would race toward a submarine's last known position, drop depth charges in patterns designed for conventional submarine tactics, then declare the area secure while the American boat remained perfectly hidden 3 miles away. Commander Mush Morton of the USS Wahoo perfected the art of the long-range approach. His boat would detect Japanese convoys at distances of 15 to 20 miles, then spend hours maneuvering into attack position. Japanese escorts, trained to expect submarines to attack immediately upon detection, would maintain their guard for the first few hours, then gradually relax as nothing happened. By the time Morton struck, the escorts had convinced themselves that the initial contact had been a false alarm. The attack on the Japanese transport Buyomaru illustrated this tactical evolution. The Wahoo tracked the convoy for 18 hours, maintaining contact while remaining completely undetected. Morton waited until the convoy entered the narrow waters between New Guinea and New Britain, where escape routes were limited and rescue unlikely. His attack sank not only the primary target, but damaged 2 escort vessels so severely that they had to return to port, removing them from active duty for months. The industrial mathematics were inexorable. Each Gato-class submarine cost approximately $6 million to build and operate for 1 war patrol. Each successful patrol typically sank between 15,000 and 30,000 tons of Japanese shipping. The replacement cost for that shipping, assuming Japan could find the steel, the shipyard capacity, and the skilled workers, exceeded $50 million per patrol. The mathematical advantage was overwhelming. America was trading $6 million investments for $50 million Japanese losses. But the true cost to Japan extended far beyond simple economics. Each sunk transport carried not only cargo, but irreplaceable skilled personnel. Pilots, technicians, experienced soldiers, and naval specialists went down with their ships, creating personnel shortages that could not be remedied by industrial production. A nation might build new ships and aircraft, but experienced aircrew required years to train and could not be manufactured in factories. The Japanese Army's 18th Division, destroyed when the transport convoy carrying them to New Guinea was attacked by the USS Harder in August 1942, represented more than 12,000 casualties. These were veteran troops who had served in China, men whose experience could not be replaced by factory production or training programs. Their loss resonated through Japanese operations for the remainder of the war. The sound of flooding compartments became the nightmare soundtrack of Japanese merchant marine service. Survivors' accounts, preserved in Japanese naval archives, describe the particular terror of submarine attack. The sudden, thunderous explosion without warning, the immediate listing of the ship, the desperate scramble for lifeboats while the vessel settled deeper into the Pacific depths. Unlike surface combat, where enemy ships could be seen and engaged, submarine attacks offered no opportunity for heroic response. Japanese sailors found themselves fighting not human enemies, but the implacable forces of physics, water pressure, structural failure, and the absolute darkness of the ocean depths. There was no honor in drowning, no glory in being swallowed by the sea without ever seeing the enemy who had killed you. The psychological impact extended beyond individual terror to fundamental questions of naval philosophy. Japanese naval tradition emphasized courage, honor, and tactical brilliance as the decisive factors in warfare. But submarines rendered these virtues irrelevant. Courage could not locate an invisible enemy. Honor could not prevent a torpedo from striking without warning. Tactical brilliance was useless against an opponent who struck once and vanished. Commander Dudley Morton's final patrol aboard the USS Wahoo demonstrated the complete transformation of submarine warfare from individual heroism to industrial process. Operating in the Sea of Japan itself, waters the Japanese considered absolutely secure, the Wahoo sank 4 transports, 2 tankers, and a destroyer in a single 2-week period. The psychological impact of American submarines operating in Japanese home waters was devastating to naval morale. Morton's patrol reports, filed with methodical precision, read like factory production summaries rather than combat narratives. Target acquired 6:30 hours, range for 200 yards, fired 4 torpedoes, 3 hits observed. Target sank stern first in 4 minutes. Proceeding to next patrol area. The clinical language masked the revolutionary nature of what was occurring. Industrial warfare had reached the submarine service. The Japanese response grew increasingly desperate. Merchant ships began sailing individually rather than in convoys, reasoning that scattered targets would be harder to locate. But individual ships proved even more vulnerable to submarine attack, lacking any escort protection and unable to coordinate defensive measures. The strategy backfired catastrophically, with submarine attacks increasing rather than decreasing. By December 1942, the bread had become more than symbol. It had become prophecy. Japanese intelligence officers, analyzing captured American submarine supplies, found themselves confronting evidence of industrial capacity that rendered their own war plans obsolete. The Americans were not merely outproducing Japan in terms of quantity. They were operating from a completely different economic paradigm. A single American submarine carried more food variety than most Japanese surface ships. The ice cream makers, initially dismissed as frivolous luxury, revealed themselves as indicators of electrical generating capacity, refrigeration technology, and supply chain sophistication that Japan could not match. If America could afford to send ice cream makers to war, what other capabilities remained hidden? The psychological transformation was complete. Japanese naval officers who had entered the war, confident in their tactical superiority and spiritual strength, found themselves confronting an enemy whose material advantages seemed infinite. The submarine war had become a demonstration of industrial philosophy. Japanese craftsmanship and warrior spirit against American mass production and technological innovation. The strangulation tightened with mathematical precision. By early 1943, Japanese merchant shipping losses exceeded replacement capacity by a factor of 3 to 1. New construction, hampered by material shortages and bombing of shipyard facilities, could not keep pace with submarine-inflicted losses. The Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere was slowly starving, cut off from the resources it needed to sustain itself. The Gato-Class submarines had achieved what no surface fleet could accomplish. They had severed Japan's maritime lifelines with surgical precision, operating from bases thousands of miles from their targets. Supplied by a logistics network that seemed inexhaustible, they had transformed the Pacific from a Japanese lake into an American hunting ground. Each submarine represented more than naval architecture. It embodied American industrial democracy in its most lethal form. Built by civilian workers in shipyards from Maine to California, equipped with technologies developed by universities and private corporations, crewed by volunteers from every American region and social class. The Gato-class boats were warfare democratized and industrialized. The final transformation came not in dramatic battle, but in quiet recognition. Japanese naval planners, studying shipping loss statistics in early 1943, realized that the submarine war had already been lost. The numbers were inexorable. At current loss rates, Japan's merchant marine would be effectively eliminated within 18 months. No tactical innovation, no strategic redeployment, no amount of courage could alter the mathematical reality. The bread had proven prophetic. A nation capable of sending fresh bread to submarines operating 8,000 miles from home was a nation whose industrial capacity transcended Japanese comprehension. The submarines themselves were merely the delivery system for American abundance. Abundance converted into instruments of maritime strangulation. In the silent depths of the Pacific, the USS Wahoo, Drum, Silversides, and their sister boats continued their methodical hunt. Each torpedo fired represented not merely tactical success, but philosophical victory. The triumph of industrial democracy over military authoritarianism, of abundance over scarcity, of patient efficiency over desperate courage. The epilogue writes itself in the depths of the Pacific, where steel sharks still patrol the shipping lanes of memory. The Gato-Class submarines had achieved more than military victory. They had demonstrated the fundamental truth that free societies, given time to mobilize their resources, possess advantages that no amount of initial tactical success can overcome. The bread, fresh and white and abundant, had become the symbol of liberty's triumph over tyranny, of plenty over want, of democracy's quiet but inexorable strength. In the end, it was not courage that decided the submarine war, but capacity. The capacity of free peoples to produce, to innovate, and to sustain themselves in the long struggle for human freedom. The sea lanes remember, and in their depths, the echo of abundance still sounds.